Hey, what's up, guys? Quincy here. Real quick before this video starts, I wanted to let you guys know that this clip is from a larger kind of podcast that I did with at Bird's Eye View from Twitter. Some of you guys know her as Mollis. She is a very talented journalist. She covers the Browns, and she also has a podcast called That's What B Said. So just want you guys to check that out and look forward to the future videos coming out. And of course, the full length podcast is going to drop on the YouTube channel at the end of the week. So enjoy. So the Browns have been through a lot of changes this season, coaching changes and front office changes. No longer is John Dorsey and no longer is Freddie Kitchens. We are in a new era in Cleveland, roughly about 2 years after we started the last one. But we're ready to start this thing off with a bang and actually review who's in and who's out. And, to do that, I felt like I needed some help from one of the best podcasters who cover the Browns, but also covers other sports and other teams, from one of the best voices in Cleveland and one of the best people on Twitter that you can find. So I found somebody who fits that description. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brittany Mollis to the show. Brittany, how you doing?
Hi, Quincy. Thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem. All right. So we're going to be talking about the Browns and their many changes this season. Just like quickly, kind of like your overall thoughts of what you feel like the Browns are doing.
I think their number one strategy for the offseason was just getting organizational alignment. And I know that people hate when I say that because I sound like a broken record. But for years, I think there has been this power struggle from like the top all the way down. And I think that has been probably their biggest obstacle. So, they took their time, they did their research, they did all the due diligence, and they hired a nerd, a nerdy football guy, an Ivy League man. And he's filled the spots with some experience and other analytical guys, other football guys, which I don't like that term, but but yeah, like I'm all for it. Got fullback season. We're ready to go. So yeah, bring it on.
Oh man. Fullback season. I remember what was it the man who shall not be named anymore? He used to always go crazy for the fullbacks.
The man who should not be named.
But just my quick thoughts on what's happened, because if people who watch this channel know, I kind of like flipped my lid when they fired John Dorsey. I did not think that was the right direction to go. I felt like that was kind of more par for the course of what the organization has unfortunately been for the last 8 years since Haslam bought the team. But for me, I try to make sure that I give things a fair shake. And one of the things that I'm going to say, and it kind of parallels what you said, that I do like about what the Browns have done this offseason is they finally just picked a direction. I felt like for the last, I think since they brought Paul DePodesta in late 2015, early 2016, they had this focus on, I think they thought they had the best analytics guy in the world, right? And then they were like, okay, well, let's pair the best analytics guy with the best football guy, we can find, and try to marry those two worlds together. And I think that's kind of the mindset that went with hiring John Dorsey. It's kind of the mindset that went with a lot of the organizational decisions. And it's just, I think the problem isn't that those two sides can't coexist, because one side, the analytics side, is meant to help the other side. I don't understand why there's this big perception of a war here, but the issue is more with alignment. It's always been alignment. I felt like it's been like, hey, if you have Paul DePodesta here and he's tasked with overhauling the organization and creating a culture, and then you also hire John Dorsey and he's tasked with the same things, and they have two different mindsets, they're naturally going to clash, not because their mindsets are different, just because their job description was literally the same.
Yeah.
And I feel like now they chose DePodesta, or they at least went in that direction. And, they got Barry. He's a guy who is fully in line with the DePodesta vision. They got Stefanski. So from the top bottom, it's one whole uniform division. And that at least to me feels more functional than what the last the decision-making process in the last 4 years have been. So while I'm not somebody who's like super, I'm not, I don't want to say not optimistic, but I will say somebody who has their reservations about Andrew Berry, and about, just how far the Browns can dip into the analytics side sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I have my reservations there, but where I am comforted is that they at least went in one direction,
Yeah.
which has been like, I've been begging them to just pick a direction for like the last 6
And
years.
now they have to see it through. This is going to be the tough part. Now that they've actually picked a direction and they have everything aligned, now it's going to come down to, can Haslam be patient enough to let this thing play out? And that's the thing that I worry about, because I'm like, oh, he's pretty quick to pull the trigger on things. So we'll see.
And it's such an interesting time to be doing this, because you're in the last 2 years of Baker's rookie deal. Realistically, you got 1 year if he plays good this year, because you're going to want to extend him before Mahomes and Jackson come up, because they're going to command tremendous money, already MVP and won some Super Bowl MVP before they even reach their rookie deal ending. And then you have Myles Garrett coming up, who I feel like he's going to be more healthy than he's ever been since he missed those last 6 games.
Oh yeah.
I think he's going to have a monster season this upcoming season. And, that's going to be big money. You're going to want to keep those 2 pieces. So like, you're in a weird part where like, this is kind of your window, but you've also been kind of hiring coaches. And it's like, this is the one time where I'm not going to give him a pass, but I'll say, I can understand the difficulty being patient in this time frame, especially if you're Haslam's, because you've never been in this situation where you do have a guy who looks like he can be a franchise quarterback. You have the pieces on the roster, Odell, Jarvis, offensively. You have Myles Garrett. You have pieces on pieces. So like, I can understand the thirst to feel like you should be winning, and where that itchy trigger finger is going to come from. I would hope that he understands that, I don't think anybody gets 5 years, but you should at least, if you're going to tear everything down like you did last year, 3 years. You got to give it 3 years.
Yeah.
But let's actually talk about some of the new changes coming into the Browns coaching staff. And I want to start with somebody who doesn't get a lot of press. Nobody really talks about him, but from everybody that I've heard that are close to the team that he came from, I just hear tremendous things about him. It's Alex Van Pelt, the new offensive coordinator, was a QB coach in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, and also QB coach in Cincinnati. To tell you how loved he is in Cincinnati, the second the Browns hired him, my friend Ace Boogie messaged me very upset that this was
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's nice to actually hear that positive feedback. And then I've done even more research about him, checked with people from that are very close to like Green Bay, and they said great things about him. So I'm very I don't know what his offense is going to look like. He was an offensive coordinator once in Buffalo, wasn't really successful. I think he had the 29th ranked DVOA offense. But that was 2009, and it was with what I would believe at that point, it's like the Ryan Fitzpatrick or the pre-Ryan Fitzpatrick Bills. Ooh. So I don't know if that's like an accurate barometer of what he can do. But everywhere he's been, like Aaron Rodgers played his best football while he was there as the quarterback coach. Andy Dalton played playoff football when he was there as a QB coach. I mean, even this year with Andy Dalton's quarterback play, it wasn't terrible. The team wasn't great, but he didn't play terrible. He's just Andy Dalton, so he carries that stigma. But I'm very positive about this one. I wanted originally going in like a very experienced, kind of like a Gary Kubiak to run the offense.
That would have been a dream. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
But I kind of knew it would be kind of a tough pull to get really experienced coordinators into a position where you just fired a coach a year. Experienced football guys just aren't going to come to that spot. Yeah. So, you're going to have to promote some folks. And
now, do we think that Stefanski is going to let him run the offense? Because I've heard people, they have anxiety over whether Stefanski is going to be like Freddie Kitchens and he's going to want to run the offense himself and play, do the play calling. Do we think that's a problem?
I honestly don't think that's Stefanski's MO. I don't think he's a big my offense kind of guy. I think he's more or less I think, and one of the things I like the most about what the hiring of Kevin Stefanski is, I think the Browns legitimately hired him because they feel like he can be the CEO of the team, kind of like what Urban Meyer did when he was a coach down in college, where Urban really wasn't the football genius. People give him credit for being a football genius, but Urban's strength was always his ability to bring in very strong coordinators and just be able to be the filter over top of that. And I think that's what they see in Stefanski. They see somebody who can run a tight ship, who can do the things that Freddie necessarily wasn't good at. So like running the meetings, kind of like the kind of mundane stuff, but also is a very good football mind to kind of look over other football minds and kind of be a filter to a lot of the madness rather than just kind of being the guy with his offense, because that's very much what Freddie Kitchens was. It was his offense. His offense was the only reason he got hired. And, you know, I always tell people when they bring me these Kevin Stefanski stats from Minnesota, and it's either positive or negative. The positive side is, oh, well, he made Kirk Cousins good. I always thought Kirk Cousins was kind of good. So like, that doesn't, you know, I don't think the reason he got hired is because of his offenses being so dynamic. I feel like the reason he got hired was they saw something in him as a human being to be able to do that job. So I think he'll let his coordinators do his job. I don't think he's going to come in trying to run the show. What do you think?
I tend to agree. I think one of his strengths is that he doesn't seem like an egomaniac. He seems like a leader who genuinely wants to help, and he doesn't have that Freddie Kitchens, I want to be your buddy, I want to be your friend sort of feel to him. He just seems like a very smart guy who takes his job very seriously. And, you know, I think he's hiring people that he trusts. And, you know, anytime a smart guy's in charge, I trust him. Smart, calm leaders are my favorite leaders. So if he wants to run the direction a certain way, I'm like, okay, I will give him the benefit of the doubt.
And I think also, because I feel Browns fans when they're worried about this, because they have a reason to be worried about it. Because look what we've lived throughout the last since 2016.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackson coming in and speaking in third person, talking about the Hugh Jackson offense, even after he got fired on FS1. It's just kind of this idea of hiring people who are going to bring in their offense. That's been the mindset, right? We're going to bring in this guy with his offense.
Yes.
And that's not always the case in the NFL. You know, like not everybody's a Kyle Shanahan. Not everybody is that offensive guru who has his system that he's going to drag everywhere else. If you look at a lot of different places, Sean Payton, when he was an offensive coordinator, that offense looks completely different than what it is in New Orleans after having Drew Brees for 20 years over there. It's just some coaches are CEOs. They're able to kind of give power to their coordinators and then kind of be a filter and know in general what their personnel is and what works best with their personnel to help mold the offense. I really hope that's what Kevin Stefanski's doing. I really, 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 really hope that we don't have to do the whole who's calling the plays.
Who's driving the bus?
Oh my goodness. And then like the disaster with the whole Freddie Kitchens thing. I remember like reading these reports and understanding that. So the guy who was running the offense was not calling the plays, which happens, but it seemed like these two dudes weren't speaking to each other
at all.
So you got a guy calling the offense for a play for an offense. He doesn't run. He doesn't talk to the guy who runs. It's just madness. And then when you see things like that, it's no wonder when I have JT O'Sullivan on, he's looking at the offense and some of the things that are happening. He's just like, what is going on here? Yes. Like you remember that one shovel pass the Lawrence guy caught? It was
hear that word.
I remember I showed that to JT because I had this theory. I was like, this can't be Baker's fault here because everybody was like saying it was Baker. He threw it right in. I was like, no, that's a blind throw right there for a shovel pass. And I remember breaking it down here. He just told me, Quincy, this is something that gets people fired. Somebody gets fired for this kind of design. And I was like, yeah, it's that bad. That was bad. And knowing what we know now in hindsight, what the nature of that was going,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
almost a miracle this team had a chance to make the playoffs at any point this season.
It's amazing that
Yeah.
they won as many games as they did. Especially, I think it was Jarvis who said they would have a game plan for like the first, 10 plays or whatever. And then Freddie just did whatever Freddie wanted to do. And it showed because like they'd come out and like a lot of times they'd look really good at the beginning. You're like, yeah, like let's get the, and then all of a sudden it would just, spiral out of control and they never got their footing back. And it's like, what? Now
And,
we understand.
and nothing backs that point up more than the first game of the season last year.
Oh
They
my
came
God.
out against Tennessee looking like Super Bowl favorites. Like that first drive, you got Rashard Higgins down the seam, boom, 20 yards. I was in the stadium. I was losing my mind. I was like, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl. By the end of the game, we're losing by like 30 points, and Logan Ryan jumping in the dog pound. It's just kind of, and that's not the first time that's happened where you've just been wondering, what are they doing? What is the plan here? What are they going to get implemented? And you would ask Freddie about it, and Freddie would, be mad about getting asked those questions, which I can understand being frustrated, because if you stink at your job and everybody's asking you, why do you stink at your job? It's not a fun place to be at. I understand the frustration there.
No, but it needed to be asked. Like,
yeah.
I don't feel bad for Freddie. Although where's he at? New York now?
Yeah, he's in New York. I think he's a quarterback coach. Hey, he landed on his feet. I think he's a good coach, and I think he needs to learn. I think he got the reins, and I don't think he got a lot of support as far as former head coaches being on that coaching staff with him. And he just had no clue. It had no shot. It had no chance. And that's. I hope that's not the same situation Stefanski's being brought into. I hope he is going to be able to give himself a chance, but I don't think he's the same person.
No, I don't think so. They seem like two completely different kind of leaders, and I much prefer a leader like Stefanski.
Also, Stefanski as a defensive coordinator. This is an interesting guy here in Joe Woods. He's been a defensive coordinator. I think he was in Denver. He was a defensive coordinator for a couple of years. Really good defensive coordinator too, by the way. Now he had Von Miller and that crazy defense, but we've seen great talent go to waste here in Cleveland. So like,
what are you talking about?
I know, right? Danny Shelton was a complete bum in Cleveland. Look at him now. Oh, but he was actually a pretty good defensive coordinator in Dallas. I mean, not in Dallas, but in Denver. I think he had a fifth-ranked DVOA defense. And then for whatever reason, he just didn't continue to get promoted. And now he's in Cleveland as a defensive coordinator. I think it's a massive upgrade to Steve Wilks, in my opinion. I think Steve Wilks had a lot of – I know he's a defensive backs guy in Steve Wilks. I think he just had some awful schemes. I think his 4-2-5 just wasn't a winning combination in NFL.
I think he had a lot of things working against him too. Out of everyone that got let go, and the one I felt the most sorry for was Steve Wilks, just because I felt like with all the injuries and everything that went wrong, I didn't think he did as bad as everyone thinks he did. I think he, the Browns defense wasn't great, but I like Steve Wilks, and that made me sad that they let him go. But I understood, and I do think Woods is an upgrade, obviously.
I think there's some positives to look at with Steve Wilks. I don't want to completely because I feel bad because he's been fired after a year twice now.
Right.
But he, like, when all the corners got hurt and we were running out there with an entire second team defensive back, room. He did a fantastic job in being able to create some coverage. I think his biggest flaw is he just could not create a consistent pass rush, even with Myles Garrett at times, because you'll see at times Myles Garrett would kind of disappear and then pop back up, get 2 sacks real quick.
Yes.
Never the consistent pass rush that we thought we would get with that defensive line. And then when Myles Garrett went out, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Myles Garrett's just that good, but I have never seen one player leave a defensive line and the entire thing. Yeah.
The fallout was incredible from that.
It was. I remember watching the game at Pittsburgh. I was like, man, they're getting absolutely no push. And it was just like clearly apparent that I didn't think without Myles Garrett, they'd be this bad. I thought Olivier Vernon would step up. you would have maybe a guy like Taki who was a pass rusher in college, maybe step up a little bit, maybe even move Ogunjobi around to some edge positions and have him pass rush, but just no push, even with Ogunjobi in there. And it was just kind of bad. And it got really bad towards the end of the season, especially with the run game, because Cincinnati ran all over Cleveland last 2 times they played in that 4-week stretch. So it was something that I think ultimately hurt him, because there really wasn't an excuse for the pass rush to be as inconsistent as it was early in the season. And then there's an excuse to have the level of play drop. I just think the level that it dropped to, and then also when you factor in, he was leading the defense in Arizona, and they had Chandler Jones, and some of the same things still came popping up for him. It just looked like a huge blind spot for Steve Wilks. And for the team that's built from the line out, honestly, with the money they put in that defensive line, it just couldn't be something that could continue to go forward, unfortunately, in my opinion. It's I feel like Joe Woods going to do a good job. I think he did a good job in Denver when he had, a good defensive line, and those kind of pieces. I feel like he learned a lot from being in San Francisco and the pass rush that they had and how they built from their defensive line. And I think he's going to be very strong here. I still think the Browns probably need to add. I think they need to get bigger on the defensive line and figure out a new role for Larry Ogunjobi. I think he's a good pass rushing defensive tackle, but not effective enough to kind of justify him being there at his size, because he's really becoming an issue when it comes to the inside run game. And it's the lack of size on the defensive line has been an issue. And I get people try to laugh at me when I say this, but it's true. This defensive line, the interior running game, the interior run defense has not been good since the Browns have lost Jamie Meter and Danny Shelton. It's not been good. I know Jamie Meter is somewhere in Cleveland, hopefully watching this video. But,
wow, I have a fan.
But I think there's something to having the beef inside with Danny Shelton and him that did actually do something for the inside run game. Now, the outside, they couldn't stop an edge run when they had those two, but they didn't have Myles Garrett, So I think getting some beef, if it's just going to be one guy, get somebody Danny Shelton size, maybe in the second round. You need to get heavier there. That's why I was so mad when they got rid of Devereaux Lawrence too in the middle of the season for no reason. But that's a whole nother tangent that I don't want to get on. But